When I was growing up, reinforcement of arithmetic facts was done largely through flashcard drills, practice worksheets, and timed tests. The Henry and Brown research study that we looked at last week, however, indicated that these were not particularly successful and that the timed tests actually worked against the development of the fact knowledge. So that leaves a gap. If we're not going to do these things that were familiar to us and that we knew how to do, what do we replace it with? We know that students do need reinforcement work with the arithmetic facts. It's not enough to introduce them. So in this particular lesson, we explore some different ideas of how to use games and other types of reinforcement activities to develop children's fact knowledge and their arithmetic strategies along with it, which the Common Core authors have indicated is important. So you've seen this slide before a couple of different times, but I just wanted to indicate where we are working. We're primarily working on the targeted reinforcement through games and other types of activities with some emphasis on visualizing as well. So we're making the transfer over to the abstract, but a lot of times children still need some visual support along the way. So we need to be cognizant of that. So here's some tasks that we're going to talk about today. Games, number talks we talked about in the last lesson, paired practice exercises, cued practice exercises, and problem solving or strategy shares. Most of the ones we're going to talk about focus primarily with the abstract and how to get that abstract component a little more fluent, although some of the games do have visuals as well. So you'll have to be thinking about the needs of your individual learners as you decide which games might be appropriate for which learners. We're going to talk both about games for developing anchor facts and games for practicing fact strategies with an emphasis on the second one, actually. But if children don't have any anchor facts, then they're not going to be able to be strategic with them. Does that make sense? So our primary focus will be on the second one. So the anchor facts we're talking about for first grade are the sums of 10 and the doubles. And you should aim to try to see if your first graders can have those pretty well fluent by the middle of the school year, so that the last half of the school year is an opportunity for them to play with that knowledge in terms of developing some level 3 strategies. Those are loose goals. Obviously, this depends on the individual students that you're working with, but that's my general goal if I can do it. Now, instead of using the skill and drill rote flashcard approach, we do a lot of this through games. Children are more invested in games. They care more about them. There's a lot of repetition in games, but children don't mind the repetition. It doesn't feel like drudgery to them. So those are some of the advantages. Here's 3 really common games that I play with students, and these students are usually, these games are pretty cheap for the most part. I buy Parcheesi at garage sales. And then we roll a die, one die, and double that amount. And we call it Parcheesi doubles. The game gets played faster. But in addition to that, children get really fast with their doubles. They learn them. They tend to learn them very, very quickly because of doing them so many times, so many rolls of the die. Concentration, or you may know it under the name of memory, where you have all the cards down in front of you and you flip up 2. I have 2 different versions for playing Go Fish and Concentration. One is with 10 frame cards, because those have a visual that helps children who need a visual to figure out what the number is that they're looking for when they try to look for a pair of 10. So they can see 7 dots and they see 3 empty spaces and they know they're looking for 3. As students are getting more comfortable with those sums of 10, then I switch them over to numeral cards and see how that goes. And Go Fish is played just like Go Fish, except instead of searching for a pair that matches the number you have in your hand, you search for the complement of those numbers that will sum it to 10. Here's another game that uses a visual. It's actually not a game, it's more of an activity, but they do it with partners. It requires some modeling first before you do it. And you have a 10 frame with 2 different colors similar to the one you see here. And so the one that I see has 3 red dots and 7 blue dots. And once I've established that, I know 3 and 7 is a combination that makes 10. So this is a game that you can use when they already have some solid knowledge of that combination. Maybe it's not fluent yet, but they are comfortable with knowing that 3 and 7 is 10. So then you try to shrink it, and what that means is you say, I know that 3 and 7 make 10. Then you lift one of them off and say, so 2 and 7 must make 9. So that's the shrink. Then you put that back and you say, I know 3 and 7 equals 10, so, and you have another one in your hand that you bring out and you say, so 4 and 7 must make 11. And so these are sentence frames that you use with this visual tool, and it gets the kids noticing visually what they're doing as they derive a fact, and it also gets them verbalizing what it sounds like to say that you have derived a fact, that you have used an anchor fact to get to an unknown. And then it also implants this idea that you can use those facts in that way. It starts out kind of slowly, but you'll be surprised how some students in your class will pick up on this pretty quickly. Tens is a commercial game you can buy that I love, and it has two different versions of it. One is where you look for combinations of 10, and you don't play with all of the triangle cards then. And the other version, you play with all the cards and you search to make combinations of 10, 20, and 30, and that's the version that you see starting to be played here. I like this game so much that I actually made a number of homemade versions, but they were pretty labor intensive. Also, pretty much all of the familiar games that your students play, you can alter the rules to them. So I already mentioned that concentration, go fish, those are two games you can play for combinations of 10, and you can play Parcheesi with doubles. Any game that they are already comfortable playing with their familiar anchor facts, you can now introduce what I call I know so. And so I just say, today you're going to play the I know so version of go fish. And basically what that means is that every time they get a combination of 10, so like if they're playing Go Fish, they put their partner cards down when they say, okay, I've got a partner. They put it down and they say out loud to their partner, I know 4 and 6 makes 10. So, and then they have to produce another fact, which could be, so 3 and 6 must make 9, or it could be, so 5 and 6 must make 11. So they have to work from their familiar fact and say, because I know this, I can also tell this. So that's all of these require some modeling initially, but after that they get the students really comfortable with how to use their fact knowledge to construct new facts. Chutes and Ladders is another game that I have students play. There's a spinner, at least in my version there is, but we ignore that and use die. We can use, and in this is true for Parcheesi as well. I start out with a 6-sided die, and when I feel that's no longer a challenge for the students, we switch it out and give them polyhedral die, 8-sided or 10-sided. And that makes more facts available to them. So Chutes and Ladders can also be played just like Parcheesi with a doubles theme, but I give students the option of moving either doubles plus 1, or doubles minus 1 of whatever die they roll. So if they roll a 5, they could say 5 plus 5 is 10, so I'm going to go 10, or they could say 5 doubled plus 1 would be 5 plus 6, that's 11. Or they could do double minus 1, 5 plus 4. Since 5 plus 5 is 10, 5 plus 4 must be 9. Now the interesting thing here is there's no pressure to do this, so children who don't feel comfortable deriving facts don't have to, but I think they will feel some desire to try to learn to do this because you can be more strategic. You can avoid chutes, or you can get to a ladder more easily if you're willing to be more flexible with your fact knowledge. So that's the advantage of modifying some of the instructions on the games. Once children have their basic anchor facts and they have some basic capacity to derive new facts, and the games I've talked about so far have been kind of intentional about really moving them towards deriving those facts into level 3 methods. But once they have some basis of, I know how to do that, it can still be pretty slow, but I know how to do it. They just need a lot of opportunity to practice with a lot of random facts coming their way, where they have to make decisions about what strategy should I use. And the problem with the timed test approach is that students never felt like they had time to develop a strategy, so they would tend to fall into counting. Well, counting for the long haul is not a very efficient strategy. And also, if they try to just do rote memory, if they had a blank, they have no backup. So here we want them to develop strategy. So a game still moves the pace along pretty nicely, but it also allows for students to feel that they can be strategic, especially if you implant the idea. Use your strategies. I want to hear at the end of your game time today what strategies you ended up using. So there are a number of games listed here, and I'm going to include these games in the teaching resources section, so I'm not going to go through all of the instructions for them here. Strategy flashcard flash. I recommend that you have flashcards available to students in sets. So instead of getting a whole deck of flashcards to work on, they get a set. And a set actually allows them to work on a strategy. So the sets are organized according to strategies. And I actually will also be placing a document in the teaching resources that lists the recommended facts per deck of cards for first grade. But essentially, children will begin by, there should be a card that indicates what kind of strategy these cards are good for. And the two players begin by going through the deck and talking over, oh, how would that look for this fact? How would you do it for this fact? So they're getting their minds primed to use strategy. So that isn't really the game mode yet. That's a pre-game mode. Then they shuffle the deck, and then each card they pull over one at a time. And whoever can do the sum the fastest then has to say how they use the strategy. If they got the sum the fastest and they were able to articulate the strategy, they get to keep that card. If they got the sum but they couldn't name the strategy, they couldn't talk about how it works, then they have to put it at the bottom. Again, you have to use some modeling initially with pretty much all games, but that allows them to get some practice using that strategy. Eventually, we're going to go into mixed practice. That's going to be a subject we'll get to in the next lesson, which is how do we bring all these strategies together into a mixed fact practice mode. Paired practice looks like this. You have a fact that you want them to use as an anchor fact, and you pair it with a fact that you think they could use a level 3 method for. So there's two columns, and they're titled like this. So if you know this, 3 plus 3, then you should know this, 3 plus 4. And so the students get used to doing these paired fact practice pages and figuring out how to use this fact to come up with the next fact. This is where the anchor fact is actually provided for them. Then you can remove that scaffold and do what's called cued fact practice. And in this case, you give them a cue at the beginning. The anchor facts are not present. You just give them a cue, such as, I'm going to have you turn the page over that's in front of you. Your goal is to try to find a hidden double in each number and see if you can actually, if that helps you find the answer quickly. Now, you can model this like on a smartboard too before they actually do it, so that you can do a think aloud for how you're noticing a hidden double or what hidden double could be there. Or does somebody else see a different hidden double? So for example, with 4 plus 3, you might think of it as 3 plus 3 plus 1, or you might think of it as 4 plus 4 minus 1. Problem solving plays an important role in fact practice by giving students a relevant application opportunity so that they can put their facts to work. And so I definitely recommend that you give them some problems which allow for them to use their strategies. And you might even say, I've looked through your homework and there are opportunities there for you to be using doubles plus 1 or your sums of 10 plus 1. I'm going to be looking for you to be able to see if you can do that. I want you to prime your mind to think about trying that. Then during the strategy shares, different learners can come at it in different ways and talk about how they actually solved it. Realistically, you're going to still have some students maybe who are doing a count all, some students who are doing a count on, and some students who are doing level 3 strategies, or more than one. Maybe somebody used a double, somebody else used a different one. So this is an exciting time where students can hear about different strategies. This is also really helpful for the students who have not yet developed the level 3 strategies, because they need a lot of opportunities to see how to do it and how other people are doing it and how it applies here and how it's really advantageous because it's so much more efficient than what I did. And so these problem-solving strategy shares provide a low-risk environment by which students who aren't yet using a strategy can begin to see the advantages of doing so. These are some commercial resources from the last 2 lessons that I think will be really helpful for you if you still feel like you're not quite sure how to put things to work. So number talks, we talked about, and then the mini lessons for extending addition and subtraction are also like number talks. So those 2 are 2 of my favorites. Once you get used to doing number talks and developing them, you can actually create your own pretty easily. But initially, sometimes people find it helpful to have a commercial source to help them get started. The book of facts, which also comes with the box of facts if you choose the box. It has wonderful dot cards that you can make, or if you buy the box of facts, they're already made for you, that you can use in warm-ups and number talks. They also have a lot of reinforcement activities, plus the all of the templates for those activities are included. So there's some really wonderful resources here for help